It is February 21st, 2020, and you're listening to the Northern Parlay. I'm BurritoJesus.
I'm CalicoJack. This is part 2.
Yeah, a two-parter this week.
We had our first... How was it flying solo for your first ever time?
It's really weird to talk 15 minutes straight into a microphone.
You did well. I listened to it on the airplane last night. I was coming back from a week-long business trip, and I was very impressed. I wasn't even bored at all.
Well, that's good. Hopefully I can achieve at least not boring.
And you did do that, so there you go.
All right. Yeah, why don't we just jump right into it? And what did we learn from week 2? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what kind of transpired last week.
So week 2, all right, let's deal with the bad first. There was some bad football in week 2. As someone who was very invested on how the Seattle Dragons were going to do on the money line, that was a rough watch. I think we really struggled with the quarterback play this week. You could see that. You can just see how much of an impact poor quarterback play makes on the quality of the game, unfortunately. Great defense is good to watch, but it was kind of a slog. But here's the thing. So I missed. I watched the whole Dragons game. You know, I'm suffering through a punishing first half of the Renegades Wildcats. And then I have to leave for the fourth quarter of Renegades Wildcats. And it ends up being 25-18 was the final.
Yeah.
And I believe when I left, it was 3-3. So the things that happened in that. And then the other game, so I was able to stream it on YouTube, but it was not on network TV at all, which was sort of annoying.
Yeah, I think in the States it was on Fox Sports 1.
Oh,
and then so TSN picked up the broadcast for us in Canada here, but they only streamed it on their website.
It's okay.
So you had to sign in either to your TSN Go or whatever they call it subscription or your like cable provider to get it, which was kind of annoying. TSN I thought was going to be picking up every game, and it's weird because they have like 5 TSN channels, and then they'll be like the TSN 3 will just say blacked out, like they're showing nothing, and you're just like you have, or they're like doubling up on curling or something like that, and it's just like you have extra channels, just show the games.
Don't buy it if you're not going to use it. So I think my struggle this week was it was a lot of bad football, but I think in terms of things that jumped out to me on the positive side or so it was interesting. I thought that Battlehawks Roughnecks game was really good.
Yeah.
I thought you made some really great points about how the Battlehawks coaching is going to lead you to an early grave.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they are capable and Tamu's good.
Yeah.
But they aren't able to put a modern offense on the field a lot of the time. And so it's very, very frustrating to watch. The other thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't note that the defenders really just rolled again. And that in a weekend that maybe wasn't as enjoyable as week 1, that Defenders Guardians game was enjoyable just for the defenders, the sideline interviews, and then the Matt McGloin blowout.
Yeah.
I know you talked about it a little bit, but boy, that was just the best.
Yeah, see, and that's at least when there's bad play, there's still possibility for entertainment just because you can talk to the players as they're playing badly. Like even Landry Jones had to step up to the mic like 3 or 4 times after throwing or after his interceptions, and
he just kept being like, "Yeah, we're just going to keep going."
He's like, "Yeah, I'm just playing bad." It's like, "What? Is there anything you need to change mentally?" It's like, "I just got to play better." It's like, okay,
it's so good. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm turning around on this. I think I'm colored a lot by by watching that Dragons Vipers game. That was just an absolute slog.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for the XFL to have like more than 50% good games every week just because, I mean, I think the teams are maybe relatively close and maybe unless the matchups are kind of 1-8, I guess, but I feel like if the quarterback play isn't very good, it's going to be hard to get a good game every day just because usually there's going to be at least 2 kind of very questionable quarterbacks going at each other, or at least one good quarterback versus one bad quarterback.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's jump into those guess the lines because this you didn't touch on it on your first episode because you want to save it for when I'm here. Mm-hmm. So we can go through this. So the first matchup was the Roughnecks are at the Tampa Bay Vipers this week. An interesting matchup of a team that hasn't played at home, that hasn't won, versus the Roughnecks, who I would say have looked pretty resilient and pretty capable. They've got some, I would say, some decent offensive play. I think the underlying numbers are, as you discussed this week, the underlying numbers are a little interesting. They're not particularly elite, but they are good. So they're going at the Vipers, and I had guessed that the Roughnecks would be favored by 6 this week.
Yeah, and I guessed 4.5. And it's funny because we use Bodog lines, the ones that we get when they're open. And on Bodog, it opened at 6. And then on Bet365, it opened at 4.5.
Which is really funny. But we do use Bodog lines. So
can't weasel my way out of that.
Can't weasel your way out of that one.
Yeah, I didn't think it would open that high. I thought it would be opening. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I thought it wouldn't open that high, but it's like since gone more in that direction. I don't know.
Well, we're kind of the theme this week is we guess low when it's a little bit high.
Yeah. So it was at 7, I think, on Bodog last night.
6.5.
Okay, it had gotten to 7 at one point, so I guess people bought back. But so I just looked, and Aaron Murray is expected to be out this week. I actually don't think that makes it that big of a difference. I think
Cornelius is
pretty rough, but I definitely prefer Aaron Murray over Cornelius. Is Aaron Murray worth 3.5 points to the line or something like that? Is the move from 4.5 to 7 entirely based on the fact that Aaron Murray's not playing? I would be surprised because I just don't think he's that valuable of a quarterback. And given that we've only seen 1 week of play, it's kind of hard to attribute much value to it. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of thought it wouldn't go that high, but it's since gone much higher.
Yeah, he's not likely to move the needle. So for the second matchup, we'll go through these a little faster here. The Renegades are at my beloved Seattle. Now that they won me the money line parlay, my beloved Seattle Dragons. So for this line, I actually thought they would actually punish the Renegades. It hasn't been a theme at all lately, but I thought they would punish the Renegades for what were 2 pretty subpar performances with a pick'em line at the Dragons.
Yeah, and I had Renegades by 3. And it opened 4.5.
I'm at a loss in this one, honestly. The Seattle home crowd was pretty good. The defense for the Dragons stepped up. For the Renegades to be getting that much respect on the road, I got nothing there.
So I think they're still big believers in the Renegades. If you look at the futures market, the Renegades are usually 3rd. So I think the market still puts a lot of value in the Renegades. And that line has since actually gone up. I've seen it 5. I don't know what it is. What is
Bodog's still 4.
It's 4.
Yeah.
See, at 4, I'm kind of interested in the Renegade side of that. But it's weird because it's not really that big of a difference between 4 and 4.5 and 5.
Minus 200 money line. I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a little preview of staying away. So next we have the Guardians, the harmonious, friendship, coach QB connection of the New York Guardians. They're at your St. Louis Battlehawks this week.
Home opener.
So my guess on this one, and apparently will be a good home crowd for this home opener. My guess on this one was Battlehawks minus 4.5, which I thought, given where we started in the last 2 weeks, a relatively, a 5 or 6 point swing when you compare road home splits. I thought those points would be enough. What about you?
I guess Battlehawks by 6, and it opened 9.5.
Legitimately surprising, right? For
that's
a team
that's a lot. But I guess I think I was kind of expecting it this week, and I talked a little bit about it in the part 1. I kind of thought that it would be hard to find a price for me to bet on the Battlehawks this week because they've looked good against the 2 teams that people thought were going to be good heading into the year, back-to-back weeks. And now it's going to be people are going to be respecting them a lot more by giving them kind of these giant inflated lines. So, and that line at some point it moved up to 10. I don't know what it was today.
It is today at 10.
Yeah, so
a minus 475 money line.
Yeah, that's
10
with an over rich.
10 with a total of 40 is really odd.
That's what does that imply? That implies that they're only expecting the Guardians to score 15 points and the Battlehawks to score 25.
Yeah,
25 to 15. I guess it's still 2 touchdowns, but I don't know. That's way too high now.
Much too high. The last one, we've got the Defenders, friend of the program, Defenders, because they keep covering our spreads. Defenders at the Wildcats, the Josh Johnson-led, kind of only throw deep, but we're a little more watchable this week, Wildcats.
Mm-hmm.
So on this one, I had Defenders minus 9.
I went Defenders minus 7, and it opened at Defenders by 8.
Mm-hmm.
So we split that one. So I win.
You said we tied this week.
No, that was from last week's score.
You win this week. Yeah, you're right. So week
2-1-1.
What a disgrace. Anyways, history has smiled upon me because now it's 8.5.
Yeah.
For Defenders Wildcats. So really, instead of losing this week, I'm actually just more of a fortune teller.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Defenders minus 8.5, minus 385 on the money line. Still don't know about that. So all right, so Burrito Jesus gets this one. So why don't you start? Give us an intro to your power rankings for this week, so I can. It's a good thing that that I'm back here now because I've got some hot takes about your power rankings.
Nice. So I went through the quarterbacks in the part 1, and part 2 I decided hold off on the team power rankings so that Calico here can lit into me with what he thinks about.
I heard I was chomping at the bit at the airport last night. I thought, oh, here we go.
All right. Well, I split them into 3 tiers. Tier 1, I have contenders. And so the number 1 team I have is the DC Defenders. I think they're the most complete team in the XFL. As I kind of talked about in the part 1, it's interesting that they have the highest success rate on deep passes so far at like 55%. And somebody else posted an interesting stat that they were tracking, or Pro Football Focus was tracking catchable deep balls. And so far, 80% of the Defenders' deep balls have been catchable. And the highest rate in the NFL last year was the San Francisco 49ers at 58%.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit of an outlier. So I think that like it'll be interesting to see what will happen when those kind of deep passes aren't connecting at that consistency, and whether or not they can kind of make up by being more accurate on the shorter throws. And Cardale Jones hasn't been really that accurate so far.
Well, you made that good point in the last podcast about Cardale Jones' short throws because of the way that his arm. So his throwing motion, it's very cocked back, almost like it's a rifle. But the problem is when you're doing short throws, it takes longer to activate that throwing motion. So what he's doing on these is he's kind of short arming these throws, or he's when you short arm, it either goes high or way low. So if you watch Jones this week, watch when he rolls out and he's got someone open, and watch the way his throwing arm goes forward, because it was very interesting to kind of track it last week and see that he's very, very inaccurate on those throws for that reason. It's almost entirely a mechanics thing. But when he had the success at Alabama, when they won that national championship, it was with an offense that was kind of built around that deep, basically those deep throws,
right,
and taking advantage of those. So they're doing the right thing.
It's interesting because deep throws are like the most valuable plays in the NFL. Like it's like if you can consistently hit deep throws, or in the XFL as well, in football in general, you're going to win a lot of games because those deep throws like get you so many yards, get you so much closer to the end zone and things like that. Like so, having that be a big chunk of your offense is good, but then it makes you predictable in some ways. So these teams should be able to kind of scheme somewhat by maybe loading up the deeper part of the field, like playing quarters coverage or something. I don't know, like doing something to kind of take that away. Maybe as weeks go on, but just something I'm kind of watching.
In the interest of expediency, because we do want to get to our best bets this week, what I will do is I will tell you as we go down these tiers whether or not I agree with whether the team should be in the tier. So I do have the Defenders at number 1 as well, and I think we're not exactly reinventing the wheel there.
Yeah, and number 2, I have the Houston Roughnecks. I think they have the best offense in the league so far, and they have good coaching, but their defense might not be as strong as the Defenders, so that's why I have them a step below.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of an element of fool's gold to their offense, just in terms of they didn't have as much deep success this week as they did in week 1, so you can kind of tell by that the yards per attempt this week from Walker was way down. He was only throwing for 170 yards.
Yeah, and the other thing is that they have had the best starting field position as far as offenses go in the league, which usually means you've been the benefit of turnovers deep on the turnovers from your opponent in like on their side of the field, which happened with Jordan Tamu this week on a couple interceptions. So that's usually something that kind of evens out over the longer term. So they'll have to be driving longer fields as kind of the season goes on, and we'll see whether or not they'll be as successful offensively.
This might be our fool's gold team. If we look back six weeks from now,
I still think they're good, but maybe they're not as far ahead as the rest of the league as they think, and maybe other teams can kind of catch up to them.
I had them here too. You can't knock them for the record.
So third, I have the Battlehawks. I feel like they should be much better than they are. They rush all the time, even though they're not very successful running the ball. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week with a team that's like, this is obviously the easiest team they've played so far in the Guardians. And so we'll see whether or not they can just kind of run over them and control the game, or whether or not their inability to like run successful rush plays will kind of hurt them in being able to kind of cover that huge number they're up against this week.
I concur. I think I've been subject to your Battlehawks propaganda long enough where I can acknowledge that. Yeah, I would say I'd maybe throw them in that middle class because I think I'm really, really concerned about the coaching and the fact that they, unless they're trying to kind of each week give Tampa a little bit more of the playbook, but that even the like when you've got a guy with that skill set, like start using play action more. Like let's start like I know you're trying to. Presumably, you're going run heavy in the first half of these games, but you want to kind of bait people with a lot more play action. But they're not even really doing that. Like it's just sort of it's a really, really frustrating offense to watch, and that's why I would have had them in that tier 2 there because I just can't. I'm concerned with some of the tendencies that they've got so far. Although I've been really, really impressed with Tamu.
Yeah. So I guess this is where my spicier takes are.
The
middle class. So tier 2 middle class teams. I have the Renegades at 4. I think they're like a step below kind of every team I have above, but I feel like they have the potential to kind of climb up into the contender rankings. Like their defense has been kind of good, and with Landry Jones playing quarterback, you kind of could see the potential of their offense, even though he made a lot of errors.
Yeah, I mean, he hit 300 yards passing.
Yeah,
and I mean, you can pick that apart in a lot of different ways, but he at least moved the ball. Philip Nelson didn't move the ball a week before.
No, is that where you had the Renegades?
Yeah, we'll get to our...
okay.
It's going to start breaking down now here.
All right, so number 5, and this is probably the spiciest take. Yep. I have the Tampa Bay Vipers. They are 0-2. This is a tough start to the season, but I think their underlying numbers show that maybe there's a team there that can turn this around. I want to see another Aaron Murray start. We're not going to get that this week. Like I'd like to see Aaron Murray start against the Roughnecks D because I don't think their D is very good as kind of good as the teams that the Vipers have played so far. But without Aaron Murray, it's going to be a little bit tougher, I think, this week. But it's still I still feel like they can be able to turn things around and turn this season around and be able to start actually scoring some touchdowns.
This is terrible. So I had the Vipers dead last for the reason that they don't have quarterback play. There's nothing happening on offense. The fact that Taylor Cornelius, I think, is measurably worse than Aaron Murray, if only for the fact that Aaron Murray at least kind of moved the ball up and down the field. Here in this spot, I had the Seattle Dragons. They're the only ones who have played the defenders, relatively well. There was some exciting back and forth in that game. Silvers at least showed something. He showed absolutely nothing against the Vipers D, which may be more of a symptom of the fact that the Vipers D is pretty good and can keep it close. But that the Dragons D was good. The Dragons running game is at least pretty capable. I had the Dragons here. Vipers dead last.
All right. Well, it brings us to my tier 3. Which is basically every other team that's left.
What did you call them here?
I called them the broken teams, which you could probably actually put Tampa Bay in there. But I still think that Tampa had one of the toughest starts possible to the season, and I think it kind of continues this week because they're playing the Roughnecks. But they haven't played a game at home yet. I think I said on the part 1 that they were the only team, but the Battlehawks also haven't played a game at home yet. And they had to play 2 road games kind of across the country. But let's get to the tier 3. So I have the Guardians at 6. They have a good defense so far, and that McGloin start last week was pretty concerning.
And it was odd. Honestly, it was odd because of the fact that it lined up a little bit with a week 1 performance instead of offensive in terms of offensive approach. But McGloin seemed so angry and so reticent about executing that offense when it wasn't really materially different from week 1 in terms of heavy on deep plays. And there was a lot of him not executing, like when he threw the interception right into the guy's hands for the touchdown, and when it was a very, very odd. It seemed like something kind of perturbed him in the pregame or something because that didn't look like everything was unraveling just from we don't have any, our scheme can't win this, we can't do it. It was an odd performance.
Yeah, I think he'll look better this week. I don't think the Battlehawks D is as good as the teams that he's played so far either. So I feel like they can kind of turn things around.
I had the Wildcats here, by the way.
Wildcats?
Yeah, really? I did. Because
they're awful.
Josh Johnson, that guy's opening it up. He's throwing deep. Plays were to be had downfield against the Renegades. I liked the way that Josh Johnson looked. I think that the fact that...
That's my... this is so early in the morning. That's usually when my alarm goes
off. Yes.
That,
as an aside, typically we record the Northern Parlay, I would say pretty late at night. Maybe sometimes we have a beer in our hand. This time we are going very, very early in the morning due to my travel schedule. So a special thanks to Burrito Jesus for coming all the way here this early in the morning.
To our solid gold studio.
But yeah, so I think Josh Johnson's going to open up the Wildcats a little bit. Of all the teams in this league, I think I'm going to favor teams that could maybe score.
Yet you have the Dragons above them.
Hold on. But the Dragons have won. The Dragons have kept it close. But if we're talking about Wildcats Guardians, it's strictly a Wildcats Guardians question. So that's my hot take. Wildcats are above the Guardians.
Yeah, I don't think I see anything I like about the Wildcats more than I like the Guardians. So 7th, I have the Dragons, and I know they just won, and I feel like maybe I'm like doing them a little bit bad here.
Come on,
they have a good defense, but they're.
And you had Silver's dead last amongst all the other. That's when I was listening to this. When I was listening to the podcast this week, I was like, "Man, what did they do to you?"
Brandon Silver's is just so bad, though. Like their their defense is good, and I think they're going to be like a good home, like a tough home team to play. But the quarterback play in the offense is just so bad that like I just don't see them being able to like kind of capitalize on that good defense week to week unless they're playing a team that just hasn't been able to score like the Vipers have. This is like a really interesting matchup for them against the Renegades this week because the Renegades should like it in all aspects like kind of be better than them on offense, but well, if their defense can control the game, they can kind of score enough. Maybe I can be a little bit higher on them, but it's just I just don't see it with them.
I'm not selling all my Brandon Silver stock yet. As I said last week, I mean, I said I would come if the Dragons won this week, I would come in a Brandon Silver's jersey. That clearly didn't happen.
Yeah, that's right.
But
I didn't hold you to that.
But you know, it's still out there. It's still under consideration.
Yeah. So last, I have the Wildcats. They have the worst pass defense in the league, a below average offense, and the only upside there is that if Josh Johnson gets healthier, he didn't really play that well last week, but yeah,
there were plays downfield.
Yeah, I could say that he made some plays. Maybe he can elevate the team a little bit, but I'm pretty down on them overall. Like I just don't see it.
I was watching with a friend and colleague who was with me on my business trip this week, and he couldn't believe it was the first time he'd ever watched the XFL, and he couldn't believe that they interview people in the locker rooms.
Oh yeah, and the halftime and everything.
And did you see the halftime interview with where the Wildcats coach tried walking away?
Oh, yeah.
Apologies to the correspondent, I don't remember her name, but she basically kind of like chased him and was like, "Hey, do you want to be on the camera?" And he's like, "No." And then eventually he got on camera. I was like, "Oh boy, this Wildcats operation is not."
Yeah, it was Winston Moss, right? That's the coach of the Wildcats. It was so funny. I mean, he was sitting because I guess he has like an Achilles and a knee injury and stuff like that. But it was just like such an amazing image of him just kind of lounging on the bench on the sideline. But yeah, I guess he's actually dealing with an injury, which is why he was doing that. But it was just such a great like visual while watching the game. But
that's the dream.
All right, well, that's the power rankings for this week. Maybe next week I'll let you power your way through them.
I'll power the power rankings next week, and I guarantee I'll still have the Vipers dead last.
So let's get to our best bets.
Oh yeah. So here's another hot take. So I was looking at your best bets here so far. Mm-hmm. Let's just get this out of the way before we start. You are counting parlays as one bet.
Yeah, because that's only one bet.
Okay.
Like if you want to like count units up or something like that, that's a different thing.
I was going to say we might have to dive into units here because I did win a 3-1 parlay, and if you just look at these standings, it looks like I'm just an ordinary person, and yet I am no ordinary person. I am the parlay king. So I just want that on the record.
Yeah. Maybe units is a much better way to track than actual win percentage anyways in gambling in general.
That was a 3-1 parlay.
Yeah. For anyone out there, if you're actually trying to keep track of your record, you're better to track units than record, because if you're betting money lines, like if you were only betting favorites in the XFL and like if you were only betting favorites in the XFL at like 70% money lines and you were hitting 65% of your bets, they're like, wow, I have a 65% win rate, but you could still be losing money. But anyways,
by the way, that was my agent just phoning just now. It was, being the parlay king, I'm going to have to make appearances everywhere.
Of course.
Yeah.
So last week's best bets, I had the Battlehawks +8 and the Dragons on the money line and went 2-0. And you had the Dragons on the money line parlayed with the Defenders -5
and went 1-0.
Went 1-0. And our friend, the Degenerate Gambler, had Battlehawks money under the parlay and under in the Dragons game and DC minus 6.5. So he went 2-1.
Typically, that Defenders bet I felt great about, almost immediately when you're watching that game. That was, and especially minus 5. That's just, it's not really an issue. But who did I sweat out that Dragons money line?
Yeah.
That game was.
I left partway through that game. I was out, and then we stopped at a bar to have dinner. And I was like, they actually had the game on the TV, so I kind of watched like the last.
Did they?
Last like.
The fourth quarter
drive.
was better, but it was because the Vipers were up 9-0.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh boy, they're not ever going to be able to score more than 9 points. But then my main man, Brandon Silvers, he turned it around.
Yeah, that was good though. That was the expected result. So going to this week's best bets, I'm in the buy low, sell high mentality this week. So buying low on the Vipers. I have +6 here, but I did also take them on the money line. But my best bet is them covering the spread. I took them at +6 when it opened, which was probably a mistake because I knew that it was probably going to go the other way. But I think this week I kind of side towards the underdogs in every game, except for maybe the Renegades and Dragons. But the Vipers are kind of my best bet to cover the spread. I think they can be better on offense than they've shown, and they played a tough schedule of defenses so far, and they haven't played a home game. So there's a lot of things kind of going into why they've looked so bad so far. The Roughnecks haven't played a road game, and they've been running really hot on offense, which I feel like is going to cool down a little bit. And I think the total in this game is actually too high as well, but my best bet is the Vipers covering the spread there. And I guess I'll go to my second one as well, which I have the Wildcats +8 against the Defenders. I think the Defenders are good, but like I was saying, I think their offense has like some potential for regression to kind of come back down to earth a little bit. And it's their first road game, and it's cross country to LA, and that's a lot of points for them to cover when they're crossing the country for the first time. So I'm taking the Wildcats +8 as well. I guess 8.5 it is today. I haven't actually bet that yet, but I'll take that 8.5 today.
So here we were. You were just talking the whole time about the Wildcats, how much you hate the Wildcats.
Yeah.
And you were taking them on the spread this week.
This is more of a counterplay to the fact that it's a giant road trip for the Defenders, and the Defenders, like, this is kind of more a bet against the Defenders being that good than the Wildcats being any sort of good. And in general, in the XFL, I think it kind of follows with the NFL, which is you're betting numbers more than you're betting teams, and this number is too high.
The other thing I was surprised about is you don't have the courage to take Vipers money line.
Did bet that, but I'm not making that my best bet because I just don't think. I mean, especially now, I think if Aaron Murray was in, I would be more willing to make the money line my best bet. But I just don't think now. It seems like it's like way less likely for them to win than without Aaron Murray. But I still think they can cover that number. I think they can kind of keep it close.
There's an old saying, and it is dance with the one that brought you. Mm. And what brought me was a Dragons money line Defender spread parlay. So that's in fact what we're going to do this week again.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. So when everyone else digs, you zag. So we're going to go Dragons money line. I think I liked the home field advantage. That was CenturyLink Field. I was encouraged by that. I liked what I saw of the Dragons defense, I like the run game. I think the Renegades are still quite overvalued. And I'm going to keep riding the Defenders until they show me that they're not going to blow out teams by 20. So what I will do is I'm going to put a Dragons +150 money line and a Defenders -8.5 point spread. And I'm going to put 10 on that to win $37.
Wow.
That's right. So that is our parlay for this week. Until this parlay loses, we're riding it, and that's going to happen again this week.
Yeah, I think it's going to lose this week.
Okay.
Both halves of those equations, I don't think add up to even 3, almost 4 to 1 in value. But
just remember how courageous I'm being, and that next week it will only count as 1-0 yet again. So I just want that on the record.
Yeah. So did you see that guy that was waving the broccoli around at the Dragons game?
No.
So there was this guy that had like 2 like stalks of broccoli in his hand, and he was like dancing. And
okay.
Anyways, so
that's good. I like that. I like that. That's good.
But so then there was the cheese guy in week 1, the broccoli guy in week 2. Like it's like so now people are just gonna be bringing strange food items to XFL games and just hoping to get on camera.
Yeah, like the problem is there's no real consistency in terms of message or in terms of what that actually means or is. Like, there's no association with food on these teams. They're not like the Dallas Cheeseheads or the.
Yeah.
So it's an odd thing, but I guess it's the same with, like, at the Raptors parade the Raptors parade, the night that the Raptors won the championship, and there was that really drunk guy who was trying to give Kawhi a plant that he stole.
Oh yeah.
And it's like sometimes we just get pleasure out of the simple, most random thing. So let's just enjoy it.
It's just like, now it's just like there's like each game next week or this week, it's like there's going to be like 10 different people with 10 different weird food items, and they're like, man, I hope I get on the camera.
Well, I think we promised that if the XFL gives us a press pass for the XFL championship, we'll bring a random food.
I'll bring some poutine.
Yeah. Just because you gotta be on brand. Our friend the Degenerate Gambler, he sent in his picks for this week. And they are Roughnecks -6.5 with the under, parlayed with the under.
Okay.
Which he said at the time was 45.5.
Yeah, it's. I think it's still 45.5 at Bodog.
So that's his one bet, and then his other bet is Defenders -8.5.
Jeez, going head to head here
with the over.
With the over,
which is 44.
Yeah.
Which, given what we saw last week, is possible. It's not. If there's a game that might go into that over, it's probably that one.
Yeah, I think I could see that because I don't know. The Defenders' defense is so good. That's kind of the one concern with taking the Wildcats there. But
I guess the bet being the Defenders are again going to be up 20 early, and then it'll be reminiscent actually of the Defenders Dragons game where it's kind of there's scores back and forth just because the margin is so big.
Yeah.
So that's our friend the Degenerate Gambler's 2 bets of the week. Again, Roughnecks -6.5 with the under, which is 45.5, and Defenders -8.5 with the over.
Okay.
So someone's going to be eating their words next week.
Yeah. I'm on the Wildcat side, even though I put them last in my power rankings,
and character assassinated them the whole time.
Yeah, well, that's just how things go. I don't know if you've bet on the NFL for a long time. You do a lot better betting on terrible teams than you do betting on the favorites every week.
So one thing I did want to mention to you is I think you should maybe tell people a little bit about the YouTube video that you posted this week.
Yeah, and this one will be up on YouTube, so you could be watching this on YouTube right now. But I'm going to be trying to posting these podcasts, if you're listening to this through some sort of podcast listening device. Instead, I'm going to be posting them on YouTube as well. Where you can see kind of some charts, numbers as we kind of talk, kind of are related to the game. Trying to show some of the kind of the statistics I've been kind of parsing as the season goes on, like things like success rate and quarterbacks yards per attempt and things like that. So if you're interested in that and seeing that kind of information, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is, I don't know what the direct URL is, but if you search the Northern Parlay on YouTube, you can find it there.
Awesome. We'll see everyone. We'll talk to everyone next week.
Yeah. Have a good week. Enjoy week 3 of the XFL.
Week 3.